Morning. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Hey, Shay, what's up? Good morning. Welcome to the channel. Oh, man. African Violet, good morning. I'll wait for a few more people to come in. Edward, good morning. Oh, Medusa, good morning. Hey, Danielle, good morning. I'll wait for a few more folks. I hope y'all are having a good Sunday morning. I I got some stuff I'm going to talk about. This is going to be more of a serious conversation. It's not going to be so much about trucking. Um, but God's been kind of dealing with me on something from some conversations I had last night and over the past few months. And I just want to deal with that. So I'm going to wait for a few more people to come in. And this morning I felt I got to deal with this. It's just one of those come to Jesus means you got to deal with it. Trucker Felicia, good morning. Erica, good morning. Erica with the cool name your mama gave you. Where y'all at in the country right now while we're waiting for more people possibly to come in? And then I'm going to get off here because I got to scan my paperwork and get it in because it got to be in by Sunday's our deadline. Hey, Medusa. Bibliophile on board, good morning. You have no idea where this is about to go. Shay, good morning. You said you're in D.C. Okay. Okay. Oh, it's just not you, magical girl, but it's gonna get good. Salina, Kansas, I've been there before. Oh, Catherine, Wyoming. Okay, I'm gonna say one of my least favorite states is I hate Wyoming in general. Anywhere in Wyoming, windy Wyoming. That's my name for Wyoming. Just windy Wyoming. Like if you can get through Wyoming without having to deal with a bunch of wind in a truck, it's a beautiful thing. Jaden, good morning. Cherie Tingen, welcome to the channel. Girl, I'm in Georgia right now. I'm in where am I at? Locust Grove. Truck broke down. All right. Georgia's pretty though, I ain't gonna lie. I'm really liking this little Locust Grove. I'm gonna see what their land cost is. I'm really like the people, just most of the folks that I've met, whether African American, white, Latino, most of them just cool. Morning, Regina. Regina, just stay in here, baby, because I definitely will talk a little bit about you. Morning. All right, we got enough folks in here. Let's see if anybody else comes in. You in Memphis. That's right. God got you. All right, so this ain't going to be so much of a trucking video. It's more of a spiritual video. And I'm going to come. I know not everybody on my channel is Christian, but that is what I am. Um, and that's the perspective I'm going to come from. Yeah, I am liking this area. I've been praying for where to be directed to and where God will direct me to because I'm from Arizona, but I want something different. There's an old saying, a prophet is not appreciated in their own land. That's a biblical saying. I may not be quoting it exactly as it's quoted, but that's my layman way of saying it. But it basically means if you're too familiar in a place, people cannot really receive the gifting that God has in you as well because they're too familiar with the old you opposed to the new you or the changing you. Dustin, good morning. I haven't seen my Dustin in the morning. How you doing, baby? So several of you I've talked to in the background, and I've actually talked by phone or in chat. And one of the things that was becoming more apparent to me, and not just with this forum, but even trying to think how best to put this. I'm going to read something my sister sent me several weeks back. My sister sends me daily prayers, and I'm supposed to be sending it out to a team of people, but lately I've been lackadaisical because, as you guys see, I have two phones. So this is the old ghetto mobile, and this is the new one, and I'm supposed to be translating all the numbers over to here. Well, this is iPhone, this is Android, so I want to manually put the numbers in. Plus, I don't want all numbers to go over. There's some numbers I don't use anymore, and so I don't want to. There might be a way to make them go over automatically with from Google to Android. I mean, from Google to iPhone, but I haven't done that. I'm manually putting them in. So I really need to sit down, and that's something I'll probably do today too, because I need to get my prayer list started. And God's been dealing with me on some stuff, especially after a very deep conversation I had last night. But in addition, that's not the only deep conversation I've had. So between last night, I didn't sleep too good. I'll get that later in my top film. I didn't sleep too good. So in addition to last night, I think the Lord's been dealing with me all night long. And then this morning, just having that moment where He's dealing with me this morning. And I'm not meeting you guys in person, but meeting you in conversation and listening to life stories that some of them mimic some of my life story. And then this morning I woke up to Christian TV. That's what I had on this morning. And I ended up changing it this morning, and then I was pretty much what was coming on anyway. I'm in the Bible Belt, so you're going to start getting Christian stuff. And I changed it to more of the ministers I like to listen to. And now I've never been a real Creflo Dollar fan, but he had on today Deion Sanders' daughter. And there was stuff he was talking about in your calling, or what you're supposed to do, what our purpose is on this planet, why we're here, why God spoke us into existence, into our mother's womb, and we ended up here on this planet. And what our purpose is once we get to a certain point where we're supposed to be doing. Because we really are here in sense to, when he speaks us we have a purpose. We have a goal in which we're supposed to be used, and hopefully we walk in that goal, because that goal usually is to be a blessing in some sort of way to other people in some roundabout or maybe even direct way. A lot of times we don't. Sometimes when the thing that we are supposed to do is very overwhelming, we don't want to do it. When it's hard, when it's difficult, when we also have to look at our own wounds, we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to deal with it because we have to look at our own hurts and our own brokenness and our own past. From the Christian perspective, the way, and some of y'all, if y'all offended by that, y'all may check out, but I'm going to keep it REAL. That's just who I am. And I'm not going to look over here and answer any questions right now. From a Christian perspective, and that's what I'm going to come from because that's my belief system, the reason that some of the damage has happened along our journey is that there are spiritual forces in the background that want to kill, steal, and destroy. That's the best way I can say. And the best way to kill, steal, and destroy something that has possibilities, that has giftings that God has put in it, is usually to attack it as early as possible. It's taken me years to understand that. It's taken me years to not be kind of like where my father is right now, sitting in a chair mad at God because of his situation. Mad at God, shaking my fist because you allowed this to happen to me. If we do not understand the dynamics of spiritual things, then we'll be caught up in craziness. It's the best way I can even begin to put it. So our lives will begin to go in all sorts of crazy directions. We don't understand why certain things happen to us in our lives, because what we see is a physical realm in which we live, and not understand that there's spiritual forces in the background at play. In talking to people, I've been coming across a lot of people who were child molest victims, child incest victims, child rape victims, people who grew up in drug households, people who grew up in households where there was prostitution in the household, where it ran in the generations, people who grew up in households where there was criminal activity, people who grew up in households with abusive parenting. Um, the laundry list goes on. I began to ask myself, Lord, why do I keep coming across these people? Now, I didn't grow up with the drug thing, but I've had a lot of people come to me who grew up in households where there was drug abuse. And usually with that, there's some other things that could come with it. Maybe you trade your child off for drugs, or whatever happens, there was a lot of damages. And I've been dealing with a lot of people who are now anywhere from 20 plus in age, and they will tell me their entire life story, and I hear all of the brokenness. I come from a mother, you go back and play some of my early videos, where I come from a childhood where my mother was abusive. My mother was a molest victim, not by a family member, but something that happened outside of a church with a bum is what she told me. I don't know all the details, but I know she was molested as a young girl. She comes from a household where she was not the favorite child. She was a fat child. She was not the pretty child like my aunt. My aunt is an attractive woman. My aunt was the favorite child of both children, two girls, one boy. Um, and my mother felt like the second class citizen, so she became a bitter, angry, and abusive woman. What I want you guys to note is the pattern. Okay? At 50 some years old, between the ages of 40 and 50, God took me back and looked over my life. There were things that I didn't understand about my childhood. There were areas at times when I was very angry with God. There was areas where I even tried to ignore being Christian and started looking at New Age things and other spiritual philosophies of life. Again, I'm judging nobody. I'm judging nobody. I'm going to come from my Christian perspective. And when you talk to me, I will never beat you over the head with the word of God, with the Bible. I just don't. I'm going to pray about situations, and I'm going to let God, we believe the Holy Spirit, do his job. I'm going to put a seed out here. You can pick it up, throw it away, do what you want with it. But in my spirit today, I need to address this because I've got too many people I'm talking to that I hear their pain. I come in a lot of areas from where you come from. I think I have good on my Christians on why you've been where you're at, what you're going through, and the freedom that you might not be walking in, and some of the freedom that I myself need to continue to step in. And this is such a difficult topic. In the recent months, last year, since the whole political thing, we have a movement called #MeToo that has happened. #MeToo is a group of mainly women who have started a movement about childhood abuses that have to be sexual, usually in nature. In some of my talks, some people use the word molest. Some, that's really the big word that's used, I was molested. But there's really three forms, or actually four forms of things that can happen to children sexually. Well, not actually three, but two of them fall under a category of rape, or can. Molestation, for the first thing, is touching. That's straight just touching, and that's what happened for me. Incest and rape are two different things, okay? In a sense, they can be. Incest usually is a family member having sexual intercourse with another family member. And normally when we use it in conjunction with somebody underage. But incest is mainly having sexual relations with somebody in your bloodline. Incest can also happen in the form of rape. And some of the people I'm talking to have been raped as children. Regina's on here, and Regina became Christian through the Joyce Meyer ministries. Joyce Meyer is a minister, if you're not aware of, who was raped continuously by her father. Um, she has ministered to tons of people, mainly her following is women, but men also. On my channel, it's not only females that I've talked to. I've talked to men via chat, and some of them also have been molest victims and or rape victims. I have a friend of mine fostering nephews, great nephews, and I believe that one of his nephews is a rape and or molest victim. Well, a rape victim or molested by his mother's boyfriend or a boyfriend. And I believe that some of his acting out is due to it because there's things that happen when any kind of sexual assault happens to a child. There's things and behaviors that come forward, and we as children don't understand the why. When I was a child, my actions were, you see the top of my head? I had long hair, very long hair. My hair used to come down here. When the molest started happening, I pulled out this whole section of here, plucked it out. Not knowing that was my break, that was my mental break for the molestation happening. I talked to another individual on here, and she said that she became kind of bullyish and fighting people and angry and didn't know until she went and had counseling. And a counselor picked up and said, "Have you ever been molested?" And she said, "What is that?" And then once they explained what that was, she said, "Yes, by my mother's boyfriend." The damages that happen to children as far as coping mechanism can go so far and so wide. I believe that some of my same-sex attraction and my non-trust of males is because of what took place as a child. I've talked to people on here who are male, born male, and now are having sexual identity crisis. So they're transitioning to female because I really believe it stems back to the abuses that happened to them as a child. And they were given for drugs and whatever and used as sexual ploys in order for their parenting or family member to get their drugs. So basically, they were prostituted by their parent in order to get drugs, and now they're an adult, and now they're at a point of, and God forgive me for calling it confusion on their gender because of the abuses that happened. So now they're going to somebody and they're saying, "You got whatever this thing is, it makes people want to transition, and you're going to transition from male to female or from female to male." I've met plenty of those along my walk as well. It's like that wake up call when you wake up and you say, "Okay, Lord, all these people are coming in this direction." While this channel was about trucking, in the background of this channel, I'm talking to so many of you, and where you're identifying with me on is your brokenness. Um, some of your brokenness, molest is hard. It is hard. Any kind of sexual abuse is hard for children, but rape as a child, rape in general is even harder because it's just harder. But any of those terms, molest, rape, incest, any of those terms that have happened to us as children, there are things that happen in the background. And what I really want to deal with this morning, because it's bothering me, is that spiritually there are things that happen that if you don't understand Some of you guys are going to be locked up in some really bad stuff for the rest of your days, in my humble opinion. And you won't get freedom. I'm starting, and I'm still working through stuff. This is a lifetime. Once that damage happens, it's a lifetime work through. Even Joyce Meyer to this day, sometimes I hear her talk about it. I feel that woman's pain of talking about what took place. But she has come through a point from where she started in ministry talking about the abuses of her father to now. And the number of females, and I'm going to say males too, that she has helped is tremendous, tremendous. But a lot of times we want to close off and be hidden about the things because of shame um, that has happened to us when it comes down to sexual sins. And that's part of, and we believe in the Bible, at least Christians, and some of them don't talk about it, we believe in two major spiritual forces, God, Satan, two very different forces, two opposing forces. And, I know there are things out there like the yin and yang and all that stuff. But in this world, we all have a concept that there is good and there is evil. Okay, so we believe in these two spiritual forces. God represents the God of the Bible, good, and Satan is the bad. If you guys go back to my thought process when I talk about chess moves, what you'll understand is anytime you're dealing in warfare, and that's what this is between these two opposing forces, it's warfare. It's a chess match for us. For each of us has our own board, so to speak. And it's a chess match for your soul, for your spirit, for your who you are. It's a chess match for your life. God, his goal, at least from the Christian perspective, is to save you. Satan is to take you so that God can't save you and take you to where he's going to be. He wants to destroy you, to basically hurt God. It's his way of getting back at him. And it would get too long for me to get into the whole history of that battle. But if you just understand the general, it's a battle between two major forces. So now, chess moves. When is the best time to try to steal, kill, and destroy a human being? If I can't get you from the womb, once you're born, I'm going to get you in your childhood. And one of the strongest ways to destroy you is to break you in some way. And sexual sin, sexual abuse, is usually one of the stronger areas because of the damages it can cause to a child. And if you would look at some of the damages to most of us who have been abused in that way, there are a lot of similarities. There is some sort of acting out that happens. There's the shame that happens. There's the brokenness that happens. And there's the things later in life that happens. So most of you I've talked to, we have similarities on. Some of you are in alternative lifestyles, whether that could be same-sex lifestyles, transitioning to a different, from what you were born sexually, um, your gender you were born with. Some of you get into what we call S&M, which means very freaky, hardcore, dark sexual behaviors, what I'm going to call them. That's the people at the whips and the chains and all that other stuff. Some of you go down that road. Some of you have gotten into cutting. I went into hair pulling. Um, some of you got into criminal activity. Some of you became physically abusive. You're fighters. Some of you became bullies. And there's a similarity that there is some outcome that has happened. But there's also a point in which we have got to understand, because we're looking at a physical person who did the abuses to us. not understanding there are spiritual forces behind them. What do I mean by that? So, in a biblical context, the Bible has a saying. It says, the fights that we have are not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in the dark places or dark areas, meaning satanic forces behind the scenes. And what it's saying is that we're looking at a flesh and blood person doing these damages to us, not understanding there are forces behind that person that actually usher them into the acts that they do. And I know it's hard to wrap your mind around it because it took me a minute. It took me a minute to wrap my head around that. It took me a minute to understand that a broken person abuses. That's why a lot of times when you hear they talk about an abuser was abused, because the cycle continues. It's known as a generational curse. It just continues. So a person who may and abuses can vary. So you can have a person who was physically abused who becomes a chested molester. You can have a person who was sexually abused. We're looking at the R. Kelly situation where his brother says, well, our sister did these molestation things to us. His sister didn't come up with that on her own. That means that was somewhere else in that line. There's something else going on in that family that it comes down the line. I'm going to challenge a lot of you, and I know some of you are walking totally different spiritual paths from me, and I'm going to pray for some of the people I've talked to. A lot of you guys who are coming to me, I realize, and I got to apologize because I realized this morning, I'm not where I need to be to really help people because I got my own stuff spiritually. I got to get back in order. I've been saying I stop cussing. I'm going to work on that. I got some other things I got to do spiritually and get back to where I need to be because what's been presented to me are some strong spiritual challenges to pray and intercede for a lot of people on here who have reached out. And even though they may not realize, good morning, Michelle, even though they may not realize that's what they're doing, that's exactly what they're doing. And I don't believe that there's by happenstance that those people are being put on my plate. I believe God is calling me to get myself in order so that I can do some interceding for you. I also got to get my prayer group back together so we can get them interceding for your situation so you can get in freedom, because right now, if you don't walk in freedom, the rest of your days are going to be a mess. And it really is. And, I finally, it took me a while to forgive my mother. And it's even dealing with Grumpy, it's taking us, so I told him, you don't have to do you. I realized in watching him, as I said, God is showing me lessons watching my earthly father, because I realized in watching him that God is teaching me lessons. You can't point a finger at somebody. This one points up to heaven usually when you're pointing at them, and not have three come back at you. Because when you're sitting there assessing somebody and pointing fingers at their issues, you got three coming back to check yourself on those same issues. And so in looking at him in his, I always say shiznit, in his mess, and looking at how stuck he is in his situation and how he's not looking to get freedom, and looking at God steadily allowing things to happen to try to wake him up, but that he's so feet in the sand about not changing things. We got to change. We've got to. Otherwise, you do what he's doing. He's sleeping his way to a casket. I pray he makes it in. I don't know. God knows his heart. I don't. That's something God knows. And knowing that we are imperfect human beings, understanding that, we have to change, and we need people to sometimes pray about our situations and pray for us, because we may be in our own confusion. I've had people on here tell me they were cutters. Um, and that's why I say when we had that little get together, me, Danielle, and Monet had mentioned just get over it. I'm like, this is not something you just can get over, because you have to go through the journey. There's a healing process to it. But the only way you heal it's almost like alcoholism with the sexual abuses and things like that that happen to children, and physical abuses. Even if it's abuse, it's a process that you have to go through. And the first process is to admit, I've been abused. I'm angry at the person who abused me. To understand that abuse, to get to a point of forgiveness, to get some deliverance into the damages that happened to you, and then to start trying to walk in what I call your healing. And and it I'm 51 years old. It took me this long to get to a point where I forgive my mother. Actually, I feel sorry for her. I look at Grumpy and I feel sorry for him. I know that that person who Grumpy is did not happen overnight. I also know there's some major spiritual stuff with Monty. There's some major spiritual things behind Monty. A lot of them are in our genetic line, in our those what we call generational curses. They're in that line. But see, we focus so much under the generational curses, we don't look at the generational blessings. So in our line also, we have a faith belief system. And that right there can squash the generational curses if we understand it. But we have a lot of times, Bible tells us my people perish for a lack of knowledge, because we have a lack of understanding spiritually. We begin to stay in the curses and not walk in the blessings that can overtake the curses. If we do not understand that, we continue to walk in foolishness, just like my father. When I woke up this morning after the conversation I had yesterday, and that's not my only conversation, trust me, over the past 6 months or so, I have had, either through phone conversations, email, or chat through Messenger on Facebook, mind-blowing conversations about people that are right in this room and people who've watched the channel, who've hit me up from either the past videos I talked about my abuses, or people who just like me in the channel and they're trying to get into trucking and maybe they're going through some things, and it comes up because I have an individual who's going through transitioning from male to female and was trying to come into trucking. And then when they told me how they got there, I'm like, oh my God, I already know where the brokenness is that's turning you this direction from what you were assigned by birth. Because when they shared their life, understood. I have another individual who told me about his mother and his family, where he grew up in a family where, I mean, he was even lied to about who his biological father was, because his mom was a prostitute. And in his family line, all of the females are pretty much have been born into they basically take the kid, and when the kid gets to a certain age, they get them into prostitution. It's in the line, like all the women, or at least females, and I don't know if he was or not. I didn't ask any questions. And when I listen to this, I'm like, oh my God, the amount of brokenness from our childhood that impacts our adulthood, and really it impacts where we can go. I'm just going to be honest. Um, so there may be some things that I'm going to start addressing on this channel that might not have to do with trucking. Um, and I got to pray how God's going to direct that. But I've got some things in my own life, and I apologize because I've got to start working on this tongue of mine. And I also got to work on some other areas so that when these things are presented to me, that I know spiritually, with God's guidance, how to address them. But I want to share that there's freedom. I want to share that there's a point of forgiveness to the person who wronged you, and to understand that there are things that were behind that person. Also to understand, so I'm going to say this too. So a lot of people understand that there's something called a soul tie. So if you had any kind of sexual behavior done, you may sometimes be tied to that abuser. So sometimes you guys may even have thoughts about the abusers, and you're sitting there scratching your head going, why am I thinking this about this perv? Because you're tied to them soul ties. So you have to speak over that, pray over that, and ask God to break those soul ties that you didn't freely want, that they were thrust up on you as a child because of sexual sins that were committed against you. You can start getting freedom in your mind, and then, Lord, I forgive the person for what they did. Oftentimes, sometimes people don't realize why they're, how can I put this? Let me go here. I'm going to go here. So for those of you who may not be Christian, some of you who don't even, I don't know if you do know Christian things. I mean, I would think there's enough going on in our world that you have a general synopsis of Christ. When Christ was on the cross, there's a point where his whole crucifixion, the whole setup, you're just scratching your head like, why are they sending this guy to the cross? Like, you guys ever saw The Passion of Christ or have any biblical knowledge? There's a point where he's hanging on the cross, and he says in the language, basically, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Okay? That is one of the most poetic statements in the Bible when you understand spiritual things. All this unctioning to the cross, they had no clue. They were being driven, and I believe spiritually, behind the scenes by the enemy to kill Jesus. Again, this is a chess game. And I hate to say it that way, and I know people are like, well, why would God put us in a chess game? It started because of two opposing forces. God created us to love us. He gave us a perfect environment to live in. And an enemy crept into the garden. And as humans, we fell for the BS. I'm sorry, God said the bull stuff. Okay, we fell for it. And it opened a door to where we lost, and I'm going to say our birthright, and we handed it over to the enemy. Jesus came to redeem that birthright for us, to get us back in so we could cross over and not go to hell, but heaven. That's just where it is. Spiritually, what has happened is that in order to basically, I'm going to win this chess game, Satan's goal is to kill, steal, and destroy. God's goal is to save as many of us as he can. But in the middle of it, we're going to have free will to go one way or another. But some of us are perishing because we don't have knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes. We're looking at flesh human beings and we're saying, you did this to me. And we're angry at this flesh human, not understanding there's spiritual stuff behind that person. There's things that are going worse and worse and worse in our world. These kids going here killing all these folks in schools and everything else, and you look at them, they got that blank, crazy ass stare on their face because there's something spiritually going on in the background. They don't even understand it. They don't know because we're so used to this physical existence that we don't understand there's bigger things behind the scenes. We've got to forgive. First, ourselves, because some of us feel so guilty about things that happened to us that were out of our control, number one. Two, we got to forgive the abusers because, Lord, forgive them. They know not what they do because they didn't even understand. My mother is bitter about her childhood, things that happened in her childhood that were out of control, that translated into her abuses towards me, how she reared her children, how bullying she was as an individual, and some of her choices to really, in my sense, want love and choose the wrong people. a wrong affection and allow the wrong people in. We can't walk in freedom if we don't understand where the damages come from. And it's not just about the flesh and blood human being, but also understand that oftentimes the flesh and blood human being that did the damages to us is also damaged. It is part of the chess game of the enemy. Just saying. Let me give you an example. And I'm not justifying my stepfather. He was sick in the sense, but I believe it was spiritual behind him. His father used to tie them to trees. They're from Texas, my stepfather, my brother's fathers, and my two brothers, their father. He would tie them to trees and beat them like they were slaves. That's abuse. All of his siblings, all of them, were into some sort of drugs, marijuana, whatever, even worse than that, alcohol, um, other drugs. Some of them OD'd. One of them was so high he walked out and got hit by a car. Broken, a broken individual, and sexually immoral. Of course, it's going to come up somewhere. So he's a perv. I'm not a fan of R. Kelly. I don't want nothing R. Kelly has. As music, I'm good. But I do understand broken people who do broken things because they haven't dealt spiritually with their stuff. And if we don't, we'll end up doing some of the similar things. Right now, I'm not involved with anybody. I don't want to be, I don't want a man, I don't want a woman, I want to be left alone. Because I believe that's my deliverance out of the alternative lifestyle I was in. I just have no interest anymore. I'm good. And I also, for my belief system, I don't believe that's the area God wanted me to go. And I know I have people here in alternative lifestyles. I'm not judging you. And I've got even friendships right now, people I'm going to be meeting who are probably active in the gay lifestyle. That's fine. That's between you and the Lord. But I also know that when I talk to them and some of the abuses they went through, I understand why. One young lady on here, me and know her cousin, mentioned it, and her cousin is very promiscuous with men. Later to find out some things in that family line, and I'm like, now it makes sense. A lot of those things that happen, if we don't deal with them, they in some way will impact our future days, our future choices. But we have to get freedom. And some of us, even though we think we're free, we're not walking into freedom. Some of my weight, my mother is an obese woman. Me and my two brothers, she had 3 children. All of us hit the 400-pound mark. That's not a coincidence. 1, 2, 3. All of us hit the 400-pound mark. One of us has lost the weight, my brother who had the gastric sleeve. The other 2 of us are still obese. That's not by happenstance. And my mother's an obese woman. That's that generational curse stuff. That's what that is. It's also the type of household we grew up in. Food became our solace. Like when I got here, first thing I wanted was I want to sit down and have me a very good meal and I need a cocktail. And I'm not alcoholic by any means. I'm very, Danielle will probably tell you, I don't, like I sit there in the house with her and Monet, and I was able to sit there with a Coca-Cola, a Diet Coke, and just sit there and talk. I'm very disciplined. Like I said, I have a control that I have to be in control of my faculties. Like when I had that margarita the other day, when I went back and had another margarita, I just do a house small margarita because I got to be in control of my faculties. How I felt when I left out there, I was in control, but I could feel I was lightheaded and my body was not in my normal zone. That's not a place I go. So, we got to reel it back because y'all got something else going on over here. we've got to change how we deal in this life. And some of us are dealing in this life through alcoholism, through drugs, through sex changes, maybe, through homosexual lifestyles, through straight lifestyles that are promiscuous, through straight lifestyles with sexual, like I said, I call it the S&M type sex, this very hardcore sex. And we don't understand how we got there. But then you tell me I was a molest victim, I was a rape victim, I was an incest victim. And when I hear that, and then I know this other stuff, I know where that's coming from. Also, we have soul ties to the people who victimized us. And we've got to start speaking over this. God, break the soul tie over my life. There's power in the tongue. There's power in what we speak. Bible tells us that once we come into the Christian walk, we can speak over situations and those situations begin to change because we can walk in now an authority now through our Christian relationship, and we can now speak to a situation and the mountains move. But a lot of times, if we don't realize it's a mountain, how do you speak to what you don't realize is a mountain in your life? If you don't know it's a mountain, you can't speak to it. And if you're not in a relationship, yes, thank you, Erica. Life or death is in the power of the tongue. If you're not in a relationship on a Christian level and you don't crack a Bible, which is wisdom, which I still got to get back. As I said, I got to get back to some things that I've gotten away from. Then we do not understand what we walk in. We just don't. So for those of you who watch this channel, and some people may not watch me, some people may unsubscribe, do what you do. I'm going to probably come with some spiritual stuff. I'm going to probably come with more spiritual stuff on this channel because I believe that there is no happenstance while I'm talking to some of you people. And I'm going to say that. I've and had the pleasure of talking to some people that have gone through some stuff. You've had some amazing changes in your life, but I don't think it's by accident that I crossed your path. Like I met Regina, and Regina, that's not what I'm looking for. Regina got to tell the story of one of her stepdaughters, which is horrid, and how the mother of the stepdaughter was into drugs and some of the things that happened to that baby, and how the mother was trading her. I'm going to use that to Regina, who obviously they don't know you personally, and what ended up happening, that baby did die later. But just when I sat back and listened to the darkness of what happened to this young lady, and the baby, ended up dying, the mama was partly responsible, mama was responsible for that. I realized how broken so many of us are. And we have to, it needs to be addressed. It just does. And we need places where we can get freedom, but if we do not understand where we need to start, the first part is to acknowledge the damages. The second part is to acknowledge there's spirits behind the people who did this. The third part is to get yourself spiritually in line. I believe it's Christian based that's going to help you do that. I know some of you guys may have other belief systems. I'm not going to get into judging that. I'm not going to argue it. I do not argue. At 51 years old, I believe what I believe. And I do not argue the word. But for you to get the freedom that you need, you're going to go through a whole bunch of hoops and then sit there and still not be in freedom. I'm going to tell you not what I think, but what I know. And you're not going to get the freedom until you have what I call the come to Jesus meeting with yourself, and then start walking in the way that God had for you to walk in all along. I'm going to read something my sister sent me this several weeks ago, and it is Christian based. Who is it? Give me a minute. I'll let you just, can you come back? All right, thank you. Let me finish this housekeeping. I'm going to read this to you. Lord, There are so many of us who believe we are too broken, that our guilt has somehow disqualified us from you. We're tired of our sin, but we feel as though we can't beat it. Let us hand it over to you. Allow us to lay it at the cross. The battle is one we cannot go at alone. The constant sorrow, worry, depression, guilt, anger, and confusion has to go. We release it. We release them from us, those things from us. They can no longer hold on to us. We cry out to you to take these chains. They are not our friends. We've become too comfortable in our pain. We've become too complacent in our sin. We've allowed them to take up residence in our minds and lives for far too long, creating us a new heart and renew in us a steadfast spirit. And she gives us Psalms 51:10. In Christ's mighty name, amen. She sent this to me back on June 17th, and that has been something, when she sent it, I was like, and last night, after talking to a young lady on here, and then reminiscing in my mind, like I said, it's not only her. Countless men and women, hashtag me too people, men and women who are struggling in this area. I'm gonna get off here because they gotta come in and clean the room. And I'm gonna go get me something to eat because I haven't eaten. My prayer is that a lot of you guys get freedom and that you, if this is something that has happened to you, these abusive, physical, mental, emotional, drug parenting, pervy parents, pervy family members, pervy stranger, pray and talk to God. And I'm believing, like I said, the Christian God, the Jehovah God, for some freedom. And I'm going to work on some stuff. And maybe what I'll do is on my Sundays or Saturdays or something like that, when I have the downtime, I can put some stuff together that will help you and me. And I'm still, this is a lifelong journey to get freedom in this area so that it doesn't block you from the things you're supposed to be doing. Because all of us, if we're born and called out by God, we have assignments. And my assignment, I think, is this issue. I get a lot of broken people. When I was at the church I was at before, I dealt with a lot of deathbed ministry. I dealt with people, don't know why, I dealt with a lot of people dying of cancer. And I dealt on the side with women who were in abusive situations. I dealt with a lot of people who were in the homosexual lifestyle, wanting out and or listening to them, and they had also been abused. A lot of people want to say, "Oh no, I'm not gay because of the abuse." There's a lot of gay folks who were sexually molested, abused. I met too many of them along my journey, in my party days, in my young days, guys and girls. Too many of us, and I really believe some of that's why a lot of us ended up in alternative lifestyles. So, um, I I want you guys to um, I want you guys to, and I'm not going to read any comments because I got to get off here and get dressed here in a minute. I'm going to get me something to eat, and I'll read through these later. But for those of you who this has impacted, I really want you to pray about it. And like I said, I will sit down and begin to try to put some things together on a spiritual level that I believe will maybe help you walk through getting your freedom. And it is going to come from a Christian background. It's not going to come from anything else. I can't come from anything else. Is what I believe. I believe it's the thing that helps you get through. It's like the alcoholic. They do the serenity prayer because they have to have that spiritual thing to get through whatever the addiction is. And I believe that our brokenness, we need something very similar to get freedom. And it's too many of us. It's too many of us, and there's too many of you crossing my path. So I believe that's part of my purpose here. It's just too many people coming up with that. Anyway, I'm gonna end the video, and I gotta get dressed. I hope you guys have a blessed Sunday. I hope prayerfully you guys got something out of it. And my heart goes out to every last person that has gone through this. Um, but there's freedom. There's freedom. We just got to choose to walk in it. And to get there, it is a journey. It's a journey because it's taken me a minute to not be angry and to then have to have some compassion and some mercy. I feel sorry for my stepfather. I feel sorry for my mother. I feel sorry for my biological father. All of these people are very damaged individuals in their own way. And all of them are suffering repercussions of things that have passed down generations. And they'll pass down to you until you start speaking over it. And then we also have to start turning from those things and start dealing with how we were impacted by the things that happened to us, whether it be weight, whether it be drinking, whether it be anger, whether it be bitterness, whether it be unforgiveness. We have to deal with the issue because otherwise it stifles the movement and the freedom that we can walk in for the rest of our days. Guys, I want you all to be blessed. Have a good day. Danielle, I'll be talking to you a little bit here. I'm going to get dressed right now. Did I brush my teeth? I had to brush my teeth because I didn't brush my teeth. I had to brush my teeth because I washed my face real quick this morning, kind of to wake up, but I didn't brush my teeth. So I'm going to brush my teeth, get dressed, and then I'm going to probably go get me something to eat because I haven't eaten. I didn't want the continental breakfast here sucks. So I'm going to get something to eat, and then I'll be talking to you. Everybody else, Monet, good morning. Everybody, good morning that I didn't say good morning to. If you came in late, you guys have to rewind and watch it. I got to end this because they want to come in and clean the room, and I need to get dressed. Peace, 2 and 2.